Ni howdy, tea people. Welcome back to another episode of Gong Fu Tea Cha, and today we are going to talk about the elusive and mysterious purple tea. What exactly is purple tea? Well, let's start with what it is not. Purple tea is not a category of tea on the same level of ontology as, say, red tea or white tea or green tea is. Those types of tea are defined primarily by their process, whereas a purple tea can be processed in many ways, as we will see soon. It is also not a breed of tea the way that an oolong like Tie Guan Yin, for example, is a breed of tea. Rather, purple tea is a phenotype, meaning that is a phenotypic expression of the tea plant. And a good way to think of this is like you got green cabbage and then you got purple cabbage. You got the green lettuce and you got purple lettuce. So in that sense, just the way that a lot of plants can be either green or purple, the tea plant can also be green or purple. And another example of aberrant phenotypic expression is red hair in human beings. It's uncommon, it happens every now and again, it is very, very noticeable, and it's down to a difference in pigments, and purple tea is the same way. Purple teas are found to have certain plant pigments, blue pigments, that give them a certain coloration and make them look purple. And so they can occur anywhere. Anywhere in the world that you have tea growing, you're going to have purple plants, assuming that there's some seed propagation going on there, and there's room for those mutations and or alternate epigenetic expressions. We're not exactly sure on a molecular level all of the different ways that tea can become purple. Sometimes tea will become purple if it gets cold. Sometimes it will become purple if it gets hot. Sometimes a purple plant is sprouted purple and it will forever be purple and will never be change color. So purple tea is really just the result, the phenotypic result of having this purple coloration. Purple tea has been known for a long time. Obviously, as long as people have been growing tea, they've observed this phenomenon of purple tea, but only recently in the modern era have people started to process purple tea and make purple tea that you can drink that is just purple. Traditionally, farmers would ignore these purple plants, or they would avoid them thinking that they were possessed with evil spirits or something like that. And so they would either leave them out of the harvest entirely and just skip these purple plants, or they would process them together with the green leaves. You go along, you pick 100 green plants, and then you get one purple plant, and there's a tiny, tiny little proportion of purple leaves in the mix, and they make a contribution to the flavor and the character of the tea, but you do not have a batch of purple leaves where you can say, this is purple tea. And depending on where you are, this mutation can occur in 1 out of every 100 plants or 1 out of every 1,000 plants, et cetera, but you do see it all over the place. And they started doing some research on it in the late 90s and early 2000s, and they discovered that the pigments responsible for the purpleness of the tea plants were anthocyanins and proanthocyanidins. And these are associated with also like fruits like blueberries. You remember a couple decades ago at this point, wild blueberries were like the superfood. It was because that they were found to have high concentrations of these plant pigments. Same with black goji berries, and a lot of other superfoods contain these blue plant pigments, anthocyanin and proanthocyanidins. Anthocyanin means blue of flowers, is what that really means. And so it can appear as blue, it can appear as red, but it does confer this special color on the foods that it is in, and also special health benefits. What are these health benefits? Well, the jury is kind of out on that because science moves slowly, but there are studies that suggest that these plant pigments can contribute to improved capillary strength, which has positive results for the circulatory system, and that it can also help to lower cholesterol and blood pressure and maybe help with some other metabolic metrics. And those are true, these are true in general of pu'er. Pu'er is generally good for the metabolism, but purple pu'er appears to be even better for the metabolism. And so these studies were originally done on the naturally occurring purple pu'er tea plants of Yunnan that are called Tzuyacha, purple bud tea. And I'll just preview this for you over here. This is our Tzuyacha. We call it wild purple. And it's not a wild tea plant the way that something like Inner Sun is wild or Ya Bao is wild, but we mean wild in the sense that it wasn't bred for its purpleness. It wasn't cultivated for that trait. They're just naturally occurring mutant purple plants, redheads. They're just out there. And that type of tea was the first to be experimented with for the purpose of making a beverage of purple tea, just pure purple tea with no regular old green tea included. And the earliest study that I could find on Google Scholar that actually connected the dots and said, anthocyanin and proanthocyanins are good for you. This kind of tea has anthocyanin and proanthocyanins. Maybe this kind of tea is good for you in that special particular way. Was called Wang and Liu from 2003, and that's the earliest study that I could find that actually associated this purple tea and its anthocyanin content with these benefits associated with anthocyanins. So that was the first investigation into this. This research kicked off a special interest in purple tea, and people started harvesting these purple plants all by themselves. I'm gonna start getting my stuff warm so we can make some of these. All by themselves, meaning that you go out in the field if you're a tea picker and you've got 2 bags, one for green tea and one for purple tea. You get to a purple plant and you harvest it and you put it all in one bag. And then at the end of the day, you've got people bringing in big stuffed full bags of green leaves and little bitty piles of purple tea, just a couple handfuls of purple tea because these plants are so rare. That means that you end up, when you take this purple tea and you sequester it and process it together, it becomes very, very expensive. In 2010, when I first moved to China, a big full-size being of this kind of tea, wild purple, Tzuyacha, was like $350. And that was, for me as a person in China, getting this tea, and I didn't get it because I didn't have any money back then, but I wish that I had. That would have been great. I would have had some like 2005 purple tea or something like that. But, you know, and so, this represents kind of a renewed interest in purple tea because, you know, I did some research. Actually, my friend Heng Yi did the research, and he told me that Liu Yu, the author of the Cha Jing, the first book about tea written in the Tang Dynasty, said, "Zi zhe shang, Lu zhe ci." It's really hard to say in Chinese. This phrase, I'm going to do it again. "Zi zhe shang, Lu zhe ci" means, very simply, purple is superior, green is inferior. So this kind of runs contrary to the conventional wisdom at the time of the discovery of these properties of purple tea, where people were ignoring, tea farmers were ignoring or avoiding the purple plants. Apparently, the wisdom that purple tea is superior goes all the way back to the inception of tea culture with Liu Yu. And I think that it's, you know, very straightforward. He's saying that purple's better. And I also really like purple tea, so I tend to agree with him. And I went on Baidu and I was looking up this quote, and people were really confused by it. They're like, was Liu Yu wrong when he said that purple is superior? And there's this whole fierce online debate about it in the Chinese tea world, because you do have this old guard contingent that's still like, no, purple tea's bad. But the kids love it. So the demand for this wild purple, this Tzuyacha, was increasing, and it was outstripping the supply. And so they started researching, how do we breed? How do we get consistently purple plants? Because it is this recessive trait, if you breed a purple plant with another purple plant, you can't assume that every seed is going to produce a purple plant. You're going to still get a lot of green plants in that. And so they researched, and in 2008, in Menghai Tea Research Institute took a very purple plant from Nanhuo Mountain and bred it with a bunch of different like high-yielding varieties, high-yielding breeds of pu'er tea plants, and they produced this, Zi Juan Purple Grace. And I'm going to hold them there together. And you can see how they look different. This wild purple, the leaves are a little bigger, older plants, seed-propagated plants, whereas this one here, Zi Juan Purple Grace, is from clones of the very, very purple offspring of this experimental union. And so now they take the mother plant, the purple mother plant, and clone it the way that you do with oolongs, like Phoenix oolongs, for example, and you end up with batches of tea that are all purple. The whole field is a bunch of purple plants, and you harvest it and you get this very, very purple-looking plant. And you can see, I'll do it again, you do have this distinctively blue character to the leaves compared with even these wild purple, which are also purple, but they're not nearly as purple. And so Tzuyacha, wild purple, naturally occurring mutant purple, Zi Juan Purple Grace, also translated as purple beauty sometimes. This is a breed of pu'er, and it's only existed since 2008. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the wild purple pu'er. And you know, the thing about the wild purple is that it doesn't look that purple when you look at it all by itself, and you're like, well, it just looks like some pu'er to me. But I'm gonna go ahead and get out some regular non-purple pu'er so we can compare them side by side. I'm gonna get some Immortal Dew out here, and we'll take a look at that. And then you should be able to, by contrast, you should be able to see some of this purpleness in the plant. And I've got my Immortal Dew, handy dandy Immortal Dew, just sitting here. There we go. Cool. So, side by side, here, I'll tilt it here so you can get a good little view of it. You see that the Immortal Dew leaves have a much lighter color to them. They're not as dark as the wild purple leaves. Normally you see Sheng Pu'er that has a dark color like this, and you say, oh, that's aged, because it does get darker as it's aged. But these are both from 2018. And so here you have normal green. I mean, there's some purple leaves in there too, just incidentally, but the majority of this batch is going to be green leaves, and this batch is going to be all naturally occurring purple leaves. They're not all going to be the same color of purple because they're all seed propagated plants that are genetically distinct from each other. And then I'll go ahead and get this party started. Here, I'm just going to do it down here so it's not so slurpy, you know, right off the bat. You know, slurping's fine for people, but chA should try not to slurp so much. I'm going to give this guy a rinse here. And it's really, in the liquor, you can also see a difference in color. It's very, extremely wild purple. It doesn't want to stay in the gaiwan. It's just busting out all over the place. Alrighty. Do one of these numbers here. I'll just do a couple. These ones off because I want to get the rinse, and I'm going to show you all the leaves as they progress. Yeah, see, they look different, don't they? That's purpleness. In the context of tea, naturally occurring mutant purple tea, that's what it is to be purple. I'm going to go ahead and give this guy another couple steepings. These guys, these dudes. And I'm not saying it's going to look purple. I'm just going to say it's be different. That's it. Just expect it to be different. Not promising any distinctive purpleness to this. And so when you're talking about Tzuyacha versus Zi Juan Cha is more purple. It has been bred to be purple. It has more of a purple color to it. Tzuyacha is going to be less purple looking, but it will be in other less obvious ways superior tea, because the reason that I like purple tea and the reason that a lot of people in China like purple tea is not because of these purported health benefits specifically, but because of the chA of purple tea. Purple tea has a purple feeling chA. And what does that mean? It's a little hard to describe. It is a character of kind of like, sort of like electric-y feeling, and in the different forms of tea, in the different categories of tea, it manifests in different ways. There we go. Got a much bigger gaiwan on the left and a much smaller Gong. There we go. So, there you have it. They're different. This one actually looks greener. It's kind of how it ends up, but that's purple. That's what purple tea, the naturally occurring purple tea, looks like when you steep it, in this case. And I'll go ahead and pour a little bit into these, and I'm going to go ahead and taste them for y'all. Since you're not here, you can't taste them. I'll taste them for you. And then also just set these down here for a second, let y'all see the color difference. You definitely get more of a golden color in the regular pu'er, and this one has more green and I guess maybe more blue also. Let's go ahead and taste them. First, the regular old ancient tree Sheng Pu'er. I say as though that's super regular. Okay. It's sweet, soft, kind of round, very bright taste. Yeah. Kind of a sweet aftertaste, a little bit of an earthiness starting to it. Distant floral notes. And then kind of a syrupy, sweet muskiness on the empty cup. I've never side-by-sided purple tea with, wild purple tea with regular Sheng Pu'er before, so that's kind of cool. Ooh, much crisper smell. It's hard to describe. Definitely different. It hits me further back in the mouth. I'm getting the flavor further back on my tongue, almost at the beginning of my throat. And I'd say the Huigan is a little bit stronger and definitely more concentrated, whereas the Huigan, the returning sweetness, that kind of sweet aftertaste that coats your mouth when you drink good tea, it is diffuse in the Immortal Dew, which is a blend of different patches, so that might have something to do with it. And it is much more concentrated in this Tzuyacha wild purple tea. Just for the sake of getting the levels close, I'm gonna do an extra pow of this dude here. And then I'm gonna make Zi Purple Grace. And then you can see how purple tea can be when it is purpling on purpose. Purposeful purpleness. Yeah. These guys get hot when you do a bunch of steeping some on with them. All right. Here we go. Got Immortal Dew chA 2018, Wild Purple Sheng Pu'er 2018. Is this chA? It's probably got some in it, but these leaves were not sequestered from the other leaves because they're Gushu, ancient tree tea. They were sequestered because they're purple, but they are seed propagated plants. Now, for the pièce de résistance, Purple Grace, pretty Purple Grace. Put that there, and I'm gonna, which gallon should I use? I kind of want to use, these leaves are more spent, so I'll go ahead and use this one. So I had this kind of elaborate analogy for this, and we'll see how well this works. But so does anyone remember? I think it was like the Oscars or like the Grammys or something, like many years ago, and it was when the Moulin Rouge had came out, and that like remake of Lady Marmalade was getting really popular, and they did this elaborate pageantry stage performance of it, and it was like all of these like divas of the time, and they were all dressed in their like, you know, Moulin Rouge outfits, and they were all singing, and then the show kind of like stops and the spotlight goes to the top, and then Christina Aguilera busts out on the top and she's doing her virtuoso vocal stuff. That's kind of like this moment for Purple Grace right here. The analogy continues. Aretha Franklin was also on that stage. And you can think of the relationship between Purple Grace and Wild Purple as being similar to the relationship between Christina Aguilera and Aretha Franklin, in the sense that Purple Grace is very, very purple and very flashy, and it's highly manicured and cultivated. But Aretha Franklin, AKA Wild Purple, is the authentic expression, the soulful, authentic expression of the mutant purple gene, and is ultimately being seed propagated a superior tea. So I don't know if that plays with the audience at all, but I was really proud of this analogy, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it for the people. Anyways, I'm not saying Purple Grace or Christina Aguilera aren't amazing. I actually like both of those things. But fundamentally, as far as the overall quality of a tea goes, the Wild Purple that we have is definitely superior to this Purple Grace breed, even though I love Purple Grace, and I love how purple it gets. If you're going for sheer purpleness, Purple Grace is definitely your lady. But if you're not there just for the purpleness, but you're there for just the overall quality of what you're consuming, then Wild Purple is the superior tea. Blip, blip, blip. All right. So it's gonna be a little strong. There's a lot of tea in there, but you know, I want it to be nice and purple, so. And actually, I haven't made any of this new batch of Purple Grace yet, so we'll see how it goes. Give her a little rinse. Get you on in there, wow, Purple Grace. And ooh, and also there's another fun thing. When we say Purple Grace, it's not really, ooh boy, never mind, I'm gonna stop talking. How's that? How's that? You're like, hey Sohan, I don't see no purple tea. How about now? Is it showing up on that side of the camera? Because it's so purple from here. Do I need someone to hand me a phone so I can backlight this? No, we're good? Okay. I'm gonna put some in the cup and everything. Oh boy, that's so purple. Good job, Purple Grace. See, it's like Christina Aguilera busting out from behind the curtain, just like hitting the high notes. I'm gonna just drink it. It looks so good. Oh, and I'll do one of these too. Here, do one of these numbers. Wow, purple. And Immortal Dew. And then we'll get this Purple Grace center stage. Christina Aguilera. Alrighty. And you might notice I'm not using my Sheng Pu'er steeping method here, where I'm just hitting the chA down. This is a very nice Purple Grace. It doesn't really get bitter, and I want to get that purpleness out. But actually this one, I would brew this one this way anyways, because it just can take a straight stream to the chA dan. Oh boy, look at that. I mean, it's hard to argue with this. That is very hard to argue with. I would not attempt to argue against the tea that is in my hand right now. I would lose. Let's get a few more in there and get a really, just to get a pillar of purpleness in this Gong Da Bei. So, the word purple grace doesn't actually translate as grace. Zi means purple and Juan means it's this character. It's a really beautiful character. It's often used in women's names in China, and it is composed of the moon radical and the woman radical and the mouth radical, which I'm not sure what that means exactly in the context of this, but the woman radical and the moon radical and the mouth radical together make this word Zhen, and it means grace, but not just any kind of grace. It means the type of grace that is common to both women and the moon. I'm gonna go with some hotter water here. Squeeze some more purple out of this. And so what I mean by that is that the feminine quality of the moon and the moon-like character of women has been recognized across cultures throughout the world. And in English, we also, in our Western culture, we also have this association of the moon being feminine to the sun's masculine. But in Chinese, they have a word to describe this feminine quality of the moon, which is identical to the moon-like, the lunar quality of women, and it is Zhen. And so sometimes it is used as a woman's name, or in a woman's name, and sometimes it refers to the quality of grace, or softness and gentleness, and beauty of the moon. And sometimes it refers to the moon itself. The Zhen that passes between the peaks of mountains refers to the actual moon in the sky. So it's a very complex and beautiful word, and it is a representation of this quality that we kind of have the concept for, but we don't have the vocabulary for it, but in Chinese they do. I'm just gonna get these dudes out of the way a little bit, and I'm just gonna hide this for a second. Put this over there. Don't wanna get it wet. It's a very nice, fancy little thing there. And I'm also gonna drink some of this before I hand it over. It looks really, really pretty in these mutton fat jade cups, and tastes like my water's not hot enough, but that's okay. Now I get almost like a kind of floral, like very, very surface of the tongue, floral rolling quality to it. And definitely not the same penetrating, persistent huigan that I got from the Tzuyacha. And if you've taken my advanced class, you know that the huigan is related to the qi overall. And the strength of the huigan, the returning sweetness, can be seen as an outward expression of the strength of the tea itself. And so I do get a really lovely taste. I get a lot of floral notes. I get a lot of almost like blueberry skin character to this. So there you go. That is Le Purple Grace, aka Zi Juan Cha. Wah, wah. Cool. Glad I remembered that Zi Juan story. So because its discovery, the original research was done in Yunnan, and because the original cultivar that was developed, Zi Juan Purple Grace, this one here, was from Yunnan. Purple tea in China traditionally, and again, this is a tradition going back all of 2 decades, traditionally is made into Sheng Pu'er because, as you can see, it retains this beautiful purple color when it's actually steeped. And some batches of wild purple are purpler than others. It's kind of like just a dice toss on that one because they are all genetically distinct. But you don't have to make purple tea into Sheng Pu'er. You can actually make it into any kind of tea at all. Like I mentioned earlier, purple tea occurs all over the world. Apparently, purple tea is getting very popular in Kenya, where they've been growing tea since the British. And I actually haven't had any. I'd like to try some, but it's getting very popular. I don't know if they are growing purple grace, the Chinese purple tea cultivar there, or if they've developed their own purple strain of tea, but it's becoming very well known in Kenya, purple tea as well. And so other regions were slow to adopt this practice of sequestering their purple plants, and you don't get as many purple plants everywhere. I've seen a lot of purple plants in Guizhou, and I've seen some purple plants in Sichuan, but I have not seen as many purple plants in the east where you have a lot of these cloned cultivars. Oolongs, you're not going to get a whole lot of purple oolong unless you make a new oolong breed that specifically is purple, because you're not going to get a genetic mutation in a population of cloned plants. I mean, you can get a mutation, but you're not going to get the random genetic expression of purpleness in a cloned lineage of a cultivar that is not naturally purple. So for example, Tieguanyin, a Tieguanyin clone might mutate and become purple, but you're never just going to randomly get a purple Tieguanyin clone straight off the bat. Something's going to happen to it. And so a lot of the Eastern Chinese teas have been a lot more bred, and this purple trait has not necessarily made it into these lineages, and so you don't see as much purple tea in other regions. But you do see purple tea in other provinces of China. You're starting to see them in Sichuan and Guizhou, batches of tea being processed specifically as purple. And so as far as the world of pu'er, starting with the world of pu'er, we have our purple Sheng Pu'ers, Ziya and Zi Juan, and either one of these can be processed, even just in Yunnan, for any given category of tea that you could make in Yunnan, which includes Sheng Pu'er, Shu Pu'er, white tea, red tea. You can have those made out of either the Zi Juan clone cultivar or Ziya, the naturally occurring wild mutant purple plants. And so here, for example, we made these ahead of time. Good thinking, Eric. Really good idea. Because otherwise this would be like a 2-hour episode if I was we have a lot of purple teas here at West China Tea. Like purple tea is extremely overrepresented in our catalog because we love it. We even have a dance party that we hold named after a purple tea. So here we have, this is a Shu Pu'er, a fermented pu'er, made from this Zi Juan variety. And this we call purple rain butter because we got a pu'er called rain butter, which is fermented in the same style, xiaodui's of fermentation. And this is purple, so we call it purple rain butter, also because of Prince. It's not an accident. We listen to Purple Rain when we drink this a lot of the time. And so when I make this tea, this Purple Rain, which was called Zi Juan Shu Cha, purple grace fermented pu'er in Chinese, it does not carry any of the purple pigment in a discernible way because the liquor is too dark to show the purple color, but it does have the purple character. And there is a significant subpopulation of the Austin tea drinking community who this is their favorite Shu Pu'er. They prefer this to all other Shu Pu'ers because of that purple quality. And I would say it gives kind of a powdery sweetness to the fermented final version. And then here we have this tea in its liquid form. And you can see the color here. It does not demonstrate any really discernible purpleness beyond what you would see in a normal cup of Shu Pu'er. Actually, I've never side-by-sided it, but I really don't think that there's that much to see there with respect to that. Likewise, you can take Zi Juan cha or Tzuyacha and oxidize them into red teas, and then you get this beauty right here. This is called Ultraviolet. We call it UV for short, and our reason for calling it that was that it is a purple-red tea. Purple and red together is violet, but we called it Ultraviolet because it sounds cooler. And this is the tea that we have a dance party named after because this tea is very, very good for making people want to dance or making them feel like dancing. And so we do like a blacklight party. It's great. We drink a whole bunch of that tea and a bunch of other teas and we dance around. It's a lot of fun. And then here, last episode, or 2 episodes ago, in the fresh white tea episode, we talked about wild purple white. So you got a little sneak preview of purple tea. So that was a white tea, a moonlight white, made from Tzuyacha, the naturally occurring purple strain, also from Nanhua Mountain. Same person. It's only one tea on this table who's not by Li Shulin. And that resulted in wild purple white and also moonlight purple, or purple moonlight, we call it purple moonlight now, which is Zi Juan chA, the purple grace cultivated varietal that has been dried, simply sun-dried into a white tea in the style of moonlight white. And you can see a little bit of the purpleness in these white tea leaves. And in the infusion, you also do get a little purpleness. And then going back to our liquid teas, here you have purple rain butter. This is ultraviolet, so this one here is this one here. And I'll show you, and you do see some of that purpleness in these leaves too. It's a little bit more blue than you'd expect a red tea to be. And then here's the wet leaves of ultraviolet, and then the wet leaves of that purple moonlight. You can see a little bit of darkness in the leaves as well. That's a little bit darker than the regular moonlight white. And then in the liquor here, you can see it does have a similar color to this. Even though it doesn't look that purple per se, it does have something in it that's a little unusual, which matches a little bit with this. And then so it's interestingly enough, just like we have wild purple white, we have also, and those ones, both purple moonlight and wild purple white, were made for us by request. As I mentioned in the other episode, Mancho was really we were on Nanhua Mountain hanging out with Li Shulin, the master, and Mancho was like, hey, is there any purple white tea? And Li Shulin was like, well, what kind of purple white tea do you want? He's like, both kinds, Ziya and Zi Juan. And he's like, sure, I'll make it. And then last year when we went to China, he had made both of them, and they're both amazing, and we love them. And so that's really exciting, because this was kind of a collaboration between us and our tea farmer, Li Shulin, taking this Zi Juan and Ziya varieties and making this moonlight white out of them. So now we have 2 kinds of purple white tea. And then also now he is making this, which is this wild purple process as a red tea. And we call this gamma ray, because we're sticking with the electromagnetic spectrum theme, ultraviolet. Gamma rays are very high vibrating, and that's kind of how you can think of this. It's like ultraviolet, but it has a really, really intense, high vibrating energy. My fiance Lindsay calls this circus, or she goes, what is it called? Carnival Ride Tea, because it has this really crazy chi to it. Very much like ultraviolet. Ultraviolet has very strong, very sensual chi, and so does this, but it's just like turned up to 11. Super excited about this. We didn't even know he made this. He just sent us some last time, and he's just like, here's some of this, and we gotta get that. And lastly, I want to talk about some purple tea that is not made from this Zi Juan or Ziya types of purple tea. So Tzuyacha, although it refers to mutant seed propagated plants in a general sense, really it only refers to mutant purple seed propagated pu'er plants. And so when you go to other regions like Sichuan and Guizhou, they also have purple tea, but they don't call it ziya because it's a different subspecies of tea. Zi Juan and Ziya from Yunnan are both Dayezhong tea plants, big leaf varietal tea plants. These are essentially means the pu'er family, the family of tea plants that are related to each other, that are big and have big leaves relative to the eastern tea plants, and that's Dayezhong, and that's what we make pu'er out of. But you can also make purple tea out of non-Dayezhong plants, such as this one, which comes from Sichuan. And I really love this tea a lot. It's one of my favorite green teas. So you notice we had a red, and we had a white, and we had a sheng, and we had a shu, but we didn't have any green teas made from the Zi Juan or Ziya types. Why is that? Because pu'er, Dayezhong, big leaf tea plants processed into green tea is essentially Sheng Pu'er. But not exactly, because they're processed a little bit differently. This represents an actual green tea in the green tea sense that is at the same time purple. So it is a purple green tea. And this is called Esmeralda. Really it's called chA, which is small leaf purple tea is what Hung Yi calls this. This is made by Hung Yi, the tea master and tea farmer who makes Inner Sun. We featured his Inner Sun on a couple episodes ago on the fresh white tea episode. So as you may remember, he is a tea master from Ma Bian, and he first learned how to process green tea. And I mentioned that he first learned how to process green tea from his mother, and also that he was doing experiments taking these wild tea plants that live in Ma Bian, distinguishing them into some 20 some odd different sub-breeds of plants that just are phenotypically similar to each other. They grow in certain regions, and because of genetic drift or niche filling, they have taken on certain traits. And they have different leaf shapes, and they have different stem thicknesses. And he's identified them over the course of his 38 years living in Ma Bian. He's distinguished all these different wild subspecies of tea plants, and some of these are purple. And I got to see them last year, and they're really purple, but they're very rare. And so this tea is made from Hung Yi's wild purple tea plants, and it is actually made by his mother. I remember last year I couldn't get any of this tea. And I was like, Hung Yi, how come you don't have any Esmeralda this year? And he's like, well, my mom just didn't make any. I was like, your mom makes that tea? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh man, she's really good. She is really good. She taught him how to make green tea. She is definitely a tea master. I got to meet her on this last trip, and she's like 75 or something. She's awesome. So she makes this tea, Esmeralda, which is this liquor here. And actually, out of these four, I would say this one, from where I'm sitting, has the most distinctively purple character to it. So sweet, sweet Esmeralda. Love this tea. And so this is kind of the analog to the Tzuyacha, because it is seed propagated, random mutation style purple tea, but it is a small leaf variety, which makes it its own whole different thing. And then I wanted to point to some of these beings that we got here. These two, this one here and this one, are both purple white teas made by Hung Yi of Ma Bian. So just like Esmeralda is the small leaf varietal, or the small leaf strain of tea plant that is naturally purple because of mutation and processed into a green tea, these are Hung Yi's white teas made in that same way. This is Unto Truth. This one here, we call it Unto Truth, Zi Juan, and this is, we call it Emily, the Emily being, because it's like Esmeralda but white. So anyway, that's our little, and also after my friend Emily Spikeman, who helped me get my business going. My business was in her house for the first year that we were in business. So this is named after her as well, the Emily Bing. And funny story, I didn't find this out till way later. She had a turtle named Esmeralda that was green. So, and what are these other bings we got here? This is just a full-on Zi Juan Sheng Pu'er, wild purple from 2015. You can see it's got the logo for the Guanyin tea house, our old tea house that we had just before this one. On there, we had these pressed on our own. We were like, this is a really good batch of wild purple. Li Shulin, will you press some mini bings for us into this? This is if I want to bribe a tea server, this is what I bribe them with usually, is one of these. And then what else we got? So this is wild purple, and then we have 3 different beings made out of the Zi Juan cha, the cultivated. Actually, we have 4 different beings made out of Zi Juan cha. We have, this is wild purple white, or sorry, this is Zi Juan white, aka purple moonlight. This one just pressed into a bing, little 100-gram bing. Haven't released these yet. Excited about it. And this is ultraviolet as a little bing, purple red. Zi Juan red, and then this guy here, I cut the top off this tong. I'm not sure why I did it. It felt compulsive, but now I realize it's because I don't want to open the tong yet, but I can show you the top. So this is how, if you've ever seen a stack of pu'er cakes, this is how it comes. There's 7 of them together, it makes a tong. That's a unit of sale. And then this is a big old bing of ultraviolet. Yeah, it's heavy, substantial. And yeah, and that's purple tea. And so what do you need to know about purple tea? Just try it. Try it and see how it feels to you. See how the energy feels to you. See how it tastes. And if you're going for purpleness and you want something that is going to look purple and people be like, ooh, so purple, Zi Juan Sheng Pu'er is definitely the way to go, which is this little blue guy here. And then if you want something, if you want like Christina Aguilera stage presence, like, you know, showstopper, but if you want like the deep soulful Aretha Franklin of purple tea, then it's going to be Tzuyacha wild purple. And there's a whole world of other expressions of purple tea. As I said before, you can make purple tea into pretty much any kind of tea at all. So we're excited to keep exploring. You may notice that we have a fermented Zi Juan, but we don't have a fermented Tzuyacha. That's kind of next on the list. We're going to see if we can ferment us some wild purple and see what all that's like. Thank you guys so much for joining us again on Gong Fu Tea Cha. We have such a great time making this show, and I'm really excited to drink a whole bunch of purple tea right now, and I'm going to be up all night again. So thanks for joining. Tune in next time to Gong Fu Tea Cha for more tea knowledge.